Welcome back, Naturalist Lance here again. In this video, I'm going to go over a few of the basic frequently asked questions that people have about iNaturalist. So let's get started. So question number one, what is an observation? So I went over this briefly in the previous video, and this is the basis of iNaturalist. So an observation is an encounter with an individual organism at a particular time and location. So separate observations should be made for each separate organism that you have observed. And if you observe an individual organism once and then the same individual organism again at a different date, then that will be two separate observations since they were observed at different times. And in the case of this one right here, this picture has two organisms in it. It has a eastern tiger swallowtail butterfly. Then the pink flower there is a Joe Pye weed. So in this case, this observation is of the eastern tiger swallowtail, so just the one organism. So if I wanted to post, or if I wanted the Joe Pye weed to be an observation, I would have to post this picture again and specify Joe Pye weed as the species for it. So if you have a picture of a flower with a bug on it, you can post them separately with separate species. So the bug is one and the flower is the other. So in question number two, what does captive and cultivated mean? So when you're uploading a photo, you have all the information in there. There's this box here that you can check on the left that says captive/cultivated. So what that is if you have a photo of a pet or like a zoo animal or something in captivity, or even a plant in a garden that's been planted, those should be labeled as captive or cultivated. So I'll encourage you not to post any observations like that. And any observations that are posted as captive or cultivated will be labeled as casual observations, and those will not be included in the Bioblitz project. But there is some gray area. If there are some garden plants that have escaped the garden and are reproducing and growing naturally in other places outside of the garden, then those individuals could be considered wild and would not be labeled as captive or cultivated. But in general, captive or cultivated animals and plants are encouraged not to be posted on here. So question number three, what is research grade and needs ID? So we'll go back to this observation here. So first, for an observation to be verifiable, it has to have a date, a location, photo or a sound or a video, and is not of a captive or cultivated organism. And any observation without one of those things will be considered a casual observation. So it has to have all those things to be verifiable. An observation is labeled as needs ID until it attains a research grade status or is voted as casual. So an observation becomes research grade when the community agrees on a species level ID, such as this one. I had originally put it as eastern tiger swallowtail, and someone came along and agreed with me. So this one is now research grade as an eastern tiger swallowtail observation. And 2/3 of the identifiers have to agree on a species, including yourself, for it to be a research grade. And a research grade observation is not permanent. If other people come along and they disagree with the previous IDs, it can go back to needs ID if the community doesn't agree on the species level ID. So in question number 4, what is an identification? So an ID is the species or general identification that you put for an organism. So when you upload an organism, when you fill out the species name, that will be the ID that you give it. And then other people can come along and agree or disagree. So now back to this observation. This user here has agreed to my original ID. But before, like if someone disagrees with your original ID, before you agree with theirs, you want to make sure that you understand why it's being ID'd as such. So feel free to leave a comment asking why they chose that ID if you don't understand why, or if you want more information. Don't just blindly accept someone's identification until you're confident in saying the same thing. So in question number 5, what is computer vision? So we'll go back to upload a few pictures here. So when you upload pictures, oftentimes, if it's a good clear picture of the organism, then the computer will recognize what species it is, and it'll automatically fill in the species name here. But you need to be careful with that because sometimes it's not always correct. And if it doesn't recognize the species, like see this first one here, it doesn't seem to recognize it. But it is most likely a spring azure butterfly, but there are actually 3 or 4 species of azure butterflies that look very identical. So you need to be careful when you choose your ID here. And in this case, it would be wise to leave it as a genus ID. That's just whole Arctic azures instead of a specific species ID, because there's so many that look similar, it's really hard to distinguish between them. So I would leave that as the genus ID. And this one right here was automatically filled in as Eastern Tiger Swallowtail, which is correct. But you need to make sure that it's actually correct before you accept it. So the next question, question number 6, what are projects? And projects, the Bioblitz we have created is one project. So projects are set up to collect observations under a common purpose. So our Wildlife Weekend Bioblitz, which is right here, is set up to collect observations within Sullivan County from October 1st to October 11th. And you can join the project if you want to, but there's no need to. Your observations will be automatically added to the project whether you join or not. So that's what projects are. And for more information on Wildlife Weekend and updates on the Bioblitz, go to bristoltn.org/wildlifeweekend.